Welcome everybody back. But when Jose is sitting next to me, there is plenty of light and plenty of enlightenment here. It is my special pleasure and privilege to introduce a dear friend of not only the Austrian Economic Center, but of the Free Market Roadshow, because Dr. Piñera has been a pioneer of the Free Market Roadshow. He was traveling for the 17 years ago for the first round of the Free Market Roadshow when we did Vienna, Bratislava, Prague, and Berlin. And we did that over a couple of days, 10 days. It was a super nice visit and very interesting because, of course, as always, Dr. Piñera keeps promoting not only his Red Bible, but with that, the pension system. Dr. Piñera is the co-chairman of Cato's project on social security choice and the founder and president of the International Center for Pension Reform. You all know that he formerly was Chile's Secretary of Labor and Social Security, and he was also the architect of this famous and already much discussed pension reform, which is actually the most successful system that we have seen across the world. And in addition, and as a Secretary of Labor, Dr. Piñera has also designed the labor laws that introduce this flexibility. And this is something that where we, especially here in Austria, can learn a lot from what you have done. And I would rather suggest that we copy-paste what you have done in flexibilization with regards to the labor markets. And thank you for all those reforms. And last but not least, I mean, you also have some academic credentials. You have a PhD from Harvard, and you were one of those famous Chicago boys, in addition to change the system back then. Thank you, Jose, for joining us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara, for that introduction. I am very honored to be here and very happy to be again in Vienna, in Central Europe, in Europe. And I am very thankful to Barbara, who has invited me many, many times. It is my privilege to be a part of the Free Market Roadshow and to just share my experiences with you in this noble and beautiful fight for a better world to everybody. I have there a first slide. I don't use many slides, but I brought you 3 key slides. And as my friend there, Pavel, look at the slide and says, that says it all. What a terrible, I had never seen, he said, such terrible numbers. Of course, an exaggeration, a man from Poland have seen other kind of numbers, horrible numbers. But yes, these are numbers about economics. And these numbers leave the talk of my friend Richard Rand, who was, of course, brilliant as always and correct in his points. But he was talking about official debt numbers of the US and European countries. That is the official debt, the debt that is with a contract, the debt that arises from issuing bonds and so on. And the numbers are the ones, of course, Richard mentioned. The European Union even has this Maastricht criteria that supposedly no country should have more than 70% of GNP as debt. But what is incredible is that all the debate about debt, even in the European Union, as I told the technocrats once in Brussels, don't mention a bigger part of the iceberg of debt. And that bigger part is the fact that in Europe and the US, you have, of course, a pension system created by Prince Otto von Bismarck in the 19th century for whatever reasons. But the fact is that he created an unfunded pension system. He created what technically is called a pay-as-you-go system. He said, if we tax workers with a little tax, we could have funds to pay the retirees. Now, he was a very good politician, so he offered a benefit to people at 65 when the average life expectancy of Prussian was only 45. So very intelligent. He created the illusion that the state would help everybody in old age, but most Prussians didn't reach 65. So the system didn't cost much. He could put a tax of less than 1%. Everyone was happy. He got credential as a reformer, etc., etc. But there is something that the great Austrian economist, of course, Friedrich von Hayek, whom I met for 3 hours in Santiago in 1981, alone, to discuss all these things, and a great mind and a great man. Well, but he talked about the law of unintended consequences. Von Bismarck pay-as-you-go system worked when there were many dozens of workers for each retiree. But the two trends, the decline, the drastic decline in fertility rates all over the world, but especially in developed countries, and on the other hand, the extension of life that has been dramatically thanks to advances in health, nutrition, etc., has created a situation in which there are very few workers per retiree. Germany is approaching in some years a situation of 1 worker and 1 retiree. I remember there was an article by a journalist, a very witty journalist, who said, well, maybe at that moment Germany may eliminate the pension system as such and may simply say in the constitution, each worker is a slave of 1 retiree and can collect half my wage every month, so that they can have the both wage, 1-to-1. You make 1,000 euros, you pay 500 to 1 retiree, 1-to-1. Of course, unsustainable socially, morally, economically, politically. But there is nothing you can do. You cannot change really those two trends. I know some governments try to change the fertility. It's very complex. There are many reasons why people have less children than before. A sad thing in my view, but that's it. And there are good reasons that doctors are increasing life expectancy. If it is a healthy life, why not? We live longer life and we enjoy this wonderful world. But this is a nightmare for the pension system of Bismarck. Every time a doctor discovers a new drug that increases life, finance ministers all over the world cry that night because their unfunded liability has gone up. The longer the people live, the more the entitlements of those people, the more difficult to finance the budget. So you immediately know when a policy is wrong, that when something that is, by common sense, good for the people living longer is a drama for the state. Something must be wrong. Well, the huge mistake of Bismarck, of course, was to break the essential link between contributions to the pension system and benefits. Ultimately, between effort and reward, when in history you have massively cut that link, immediately you create the wrong incentives. Most workers would prefer not to pay contributions, and there are black markets, under-declared salaries, etc., etc. And most people will try at every moment to get a law that favor them to get a better pension or an earlier pension. So the whole incentive, the whole population is working against the equilibrium and sustainability of your system. You have created a monster of incentives. So my view 40 years ago, when I got my master's and PhD at that university you mentioned, was that this was totally wrong, and that we should change that at the root. And then I became very young Minister of Labor and Pensions with only one mission: to go to this source of the problem and to restore the link between contributions and benefits. And for that, you got to create a system that I have called capitalization system, where your contributions go to your personal retirement accounts. The contributions grow over 40 years, well invested in a diversified portfolio in the capital market. And then at the end of your life, you don't look to the finance minister whether he has money or not, but you look to the balance of your personal retirement account that has grown over 40, 45 years. But anyway, to begin now, the problem, and here I will end this, is that the real debt of Europe is the official debt that Richard Rand explained so well, plus the unfunded liabilities that is a sort of debt of the state. So I brought here, I have a lot of those graphs done by my center, but this time I prefer to use Eurostat, because otherwise you will say, no, those numbers were created in that long and narrow country called Chile, you see. No, I'm using numbers from Europe here, the Eurostat. And as you can see there, countries like Spain, Austria, France, have debts that are 400 to 500% of GNP. Not 70% of GNP, 400% of GNP. Now, there is, of course, a subtle difference between an official debt with a contract and an unfunded liability. You can change the laws and diminish the liabilities. If you reduce the benefits or you increase the retirement age, you can reduce the unfunded liability. But you have seen with President Emmanuel Macron how he was trying to increase the retirement age for just 2 years, 62 to 64, and he almost had a revolution in France. Imagine the day when he tries to increase the retirement age to 70 years old. And it's not only because, well, the French like so much strikes, but it's also because the people feel cheated. Because the theory behind the pay-as-you-go Bismarckian system is that there is a sort of contract. Some economists even call it an intergenerational contract, just to put nice words. I always said as labor minister, I have never signed that contract. Show me the contract. Of course, there is no contract, it's just the laws. But the people think that there is a contract and that they have contributed 40 years, so they don't like Emmanuel Macron to just increase the retirement age. They say, we have paid. And since nobody has explained this, that there are no funds, that the system is not backed by real money, that it's all a pyramid system, well, the people protest and strike and destroy and eventually violence. Well, this is the problem then. In Europe, you have real debts of 300, 400, 500%. And of course, this problem can be solved. In Chile, we had an unfunded liability of over 100% of GNP when I became labor minister. And today, that of course is zero, because we do not have unfunded pension system. So the unfunded liability is zero. We solved the problem. Now, that is called the transition problem. It's very complex. I will not explain it today. I would need 5 blackboards simultaneously to explain the transition. And I did it, so I can always tell you everything can be done in this life with difficulty. The easy things are done by my children. I do only the most difficult challenges, but they can be done. Now, the beauty of Chile is that we change. As I said, a system linking effort and reward. Your pension depends on your life of contributions. But then the system had a great help from the most powerful force in the universe, compound interest. I knew, of course, at that time that savvy financiers, like many of you, understand very well the power of compound interest. And the early bankers of the world were able to use the power of compound interest in their legitimate favor. But workers have never been able to use that because they cannot save. In the only thing that Marx was approximately correct was when he said that workers at the end of their life, the month, have nothing except their wage, but they have to spend all their wage. Well, at that time, that was totally true. Today, in some countries, true or not, but most workers of the world do not have, at the end of the month, after paying food, drinks, house, whatever, energy, to save. So what I invented in Chile was to use the pension contribution that instead of a tax became a saving of the worker. So the worker puts money in their personal retirement account out of their pension contribution, and that money grows. So the second slide shows how this has benefited workers in the most extraordinary way in Chilean history. This line is very simple. The red is the amount of money a worker has contributed over 40 years, and the total fund that he has in his account, or her account. Every woman is there, of course. And the incredible thing is, thanks to the power of compound interest, that is money invested in capital markets in a good way, of course, in a diversified portfolio, regulated in a market-friendly way. We do not accept any sort of inside trading or any fraud. Of course, there has never been a fraud in 40 years. I am in favor of the free market, but I am not naive. You see, I know that some people like to steal money when they see these amounts of money. So I put a lot of ways to secure this money, always in a friendly way to the market, because otherwise there is an unintended consequence. Well, but the news today is that every 1,000 euros that a Chilean worker has in his or her account, 76% of that money is given by the capitalization system. And only 24% of that money in real terms, indexed, of course, by inflation, the 24, as we do everything in Chile, is money that they have all really contributed. So we have multiplied by 4 the funds that any worker has in their account. This is a massive a creation of wealth. I don't use the word redistribution. This doesn't redistribute from someone else. No. This is wealth creation by the power of the market with compound interest that, as we know, is not linearly but exponentially. So workers are happy in Chile. I can tell you later stories of how we just defeated an attempt to change a constitution. Because I went to Vienna and I said, if the new constitution does not protect this money, you should vote no, even if you are a die-hard communist. Communists like funds, like Lexus, like good wine. So they voted against because the new constitution was threatening these funds. So by turning every worker into a small capitalist, we have created a much more stable society. Now, not a perfect society. At one point, we elected some very bad people. That is democracy. But at the end of the day, those bad people were unable to destroy the structural reforms that have created so much prosperity to the workers and to Chile. And to finalize, when someone here will say, a good idea, but it cannot be done except in long and narrow countries like Chile, I was told that in the first 10 years after I went around the world. Yes, very good idea, but this can only be done in a country like Chile. I don't know why exactly. Well, I have dedicated my life to share this idea, and I am happy to announce with you, again, this is not my graph, it's this International Federation of Pension Funds, that already 46 countries have introduced partially or totally. In the case of Mexico, totally. 50 million little Mexicans go around with a personal retirement account. Every time I visit Mexico, I talk to the taxi driver. How much money do you have? What has been your profitability? Your wife is happy with your money, or is she the one who is? Or partial. Sweden, I received a delegation of parliament 20 years ago, Bo Kernberg and several of them, and they introduced a 2.5% of wages capitalization system. Australia, total capitalization with a contribution rate of 10 or 11%. Each country has its own, I don't remember each one, but 46 countries. I came yesterday only from Bratislava in 2002 with Prime Minister Surinda, and Finance Minister Miklos, we did the capitalization system partially in Slovakia. The point of this graph is not just to say we have done it because of simply satisfaction. It is that this can be done. Now, I have never said that this is easy. No, anyone who tells you it is an easy reform, then it's not a structural reform. To solve real problems in today's world is difficult, of course. But they can be done with rationality, with honesty, with passion, with conviction, with communication. You have to communicate this to the people in terms that are simple. I imagine that every one of you have understand every word. I don't use Harvard words, technocratic words. That's a way of hiding your ignorance many times. No, with simple, common sense word, but deep theory behind it. So this can be done, Barbara, and I hope we will do it in more countries in the future.
Well, there are many more countries. The next index we will set up is the index of the free market roadshow countries. How many have already done the reform? And
it's a very good idea.
what magic did you do in order to make sure that this is literally safe and that the money will not be gone in thin air? Because we have seen a country like in a neighboring country of Austria where this has happened because of the change of government in 2008, 2009 when they were in difficulties. We're not naming the country now, but we both know which country unfortunately did do that. So what did you do that no politician and no other group can steal the money from the worker capitalists?
Well, that is the million-dollar question. Barbara has exactly pointed what was the most difficult challenge. This, when I was creating this, I almost couldn't sleep at night, of course, because it's simply to create a system of savings. In Chile, I always credited my mother with that, because when we were 6 children, and of course she gave us an account, and if we put 1 peso, she put another peso. So if we wanted to buy a bicycle, we had to save. So the real creator of this system is my mother in heaven. But I had to create the safe system. You see that my mother didn't have to deal with that. So you're right. There are 2 answers to that. What is the technical one? And it's too long to explain to you, but you understand my worry. That is, as a master's and a Harvard PhD, I can study these problems. I can find ways to make it very safe as it can be done in this life, where there is no 100% guarantee. So I can begin, for example, we created the system, and that was crucial, in which the manager is different from the fund. Some people, when they knew that I was creating this, said, okay, let's give this to the banks. And I said, no, because the banks mix one source of money with other source of money. They have short-run loans. No, banks go bankrupt all over the world in an easy way. Well, we had Lehman Brothers. No, this will be, the fund will be a self-entity legally and financially and economically, where you will have on the liability side the accounts of the workers exactly equal to the investments of the workers. And the investments of the workers have to be in traded security. You cannot buy a villa in Italy whose price can be whatever. No, this has to be traded securities in well-behaved capital markets of Chile and the world. But anyway, the fund then cannot go bankrupt by definition. The value of the investment can go down, of course, 5%, 10%. In the Lehman crisis, 20% may be a portfolio, but no more. And the liabilities, the value of the account, go down 20%. 20% means that you don't go bankrupt. You have not promised the return. It's a resulting return. And incidentally, that was a great decision because of that, the workers have obtained that 76% capitalization. So I said no to bankers. I love you. You are all my friends. You are all my students. Make money, but not with this money. It's so important that it has to, because
and you did one other thing.
Yeah,
competition among the funds.
Well, that is very good. Well, you can do this. Why don't we change it? No, of course, that is the ABC. First a fund and then a manager. The manager manages the fund, charges a commission. The manager can go bankrupt if he invests too much in paintings, in carpets, and champagne. But the fund cannot go bankrupt. So I explained that to the workers with a blackboard. Week after week on television, your funds are here, not here. Now, the manager, yes, some people, very good your question, wanted the managers to be only Chileans, for example. It's always in one country. We are nationalists and therefore only Chileans should manage them. Why should we allow the Americans, the Austrians? I said, no. We should allow them in order to have competition and lower the commissions, increase their ability to generate good rates of return and benefit the workers. So from the first day, total competition. Anyone can set a pension fund, and from the first day, Banco de Santander, I remember today, Prudential is there, MetLife is there. You see, competition, of course. Okay, so there were a lot of those. I gave you the best, the most important. But the second point, we knew that in a democracy, people have the right to elect the leaders, and they can make mistakes, and they can elect very bad leaders. I understand you know something of that also in Europe. You don't not always elect Thatchers or Churchills or whatever. You also elect bad leaders. That is democracy. So I cannot solve that in a democracy, and we wanted a democracy. We had fought for a democracy. We defeated communism to have a democracy, and we built a democracy. We did a constitution. I signed the constitution that created democracy in Chile. Now, what do you do in democracy? Communications. And I have spent 4 years of my life between road shows, in the middle of road shows with you, to explain the system. So that's why I publish books and pamphlets and read books. I don't publish a little red book just because, come on, I can publish a 1,000-page book like academics like, but nobody reads nowadays a 1,000-page book, while everyone can read a red book. And of course, we choose red as a provocation. You see, red is not bad. You see, red is good. Equality of opportunities, as the Stanchev's couple so wonderful were explaining, is a universal value. It's not a communist value. So I chose red. And this is the little red book, opposite to the very wrong red book. Once in Shanghai, 5,000 Chinese, I bought a little red book of Mao in the street, and I began my conference saying, I respect the man who wrote this. I'm a careful man, I have children, I have to respect the man who wrote the Mao book, but it's wrong. But the good news is that red little books, and they are not all wrong, there is another red book that is right. So here we have 5,000 copies. Here is a little red book. So these are communication wise, not, but I use television, I use X, especially now with Elon Musk. I use Facebook, I use YouTube. Not that I dedicate my life to that, but I am constantly communicating. And let me say something very interesting, that when the Lehman crisis came and all the markets went down, I knew that there was going to be trouble, because a lot of people will say your fund value went down. So I stopped all travels around the world, all free market road shows. I went to my country, Chile, ready. And of course, the socialist senator began to say we have to dismantle the system because the real return that year was minus 20%. So I went on television and I made it's very well known in Chile. I said, okay, it has gone down 20% in the last year, but let's see how much you have earned in 20 years. And then I had the famous blackboard, and I said, I simply cannot show how much without standing over the chair. So would you allow me to stand over a chair? And I stand then over a chair. This is very dramatic in television because the cameraman has to move the camera up like. So I stand over the chair and I said, you began your funds here. I will not do it today. I'm too old to do it. Humbly. I could fall down.
No, this would be too dangerous.
Video there.
And, no liabilities.
So I stand here and I said, you earn here. and now you go down 20%. Are you better off now or at the beginning if I had not existed? End of the discussion. The socialist senator left the room, said you are using tricks to explain to the people. But the people understood that you can. And then I said, and I am sure that capitalism will survive, not as Joseph Stiglitz, who said capitalism will be dead. Nonsense. Minus 20%, time to buy. And I was with Warren Buffett on that line. He bought Apple at that time. And I told the workers, I believe in freedom, I believe in capitalism, unless nuclear war, blah, 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 but then pension will not be a problem, you see. So, communication, Barbara. So when the second threat came only last year that this bad constitution was trying to expropriate, blah, blah, I went on television again. And we won again, and we defeated the constitutional project. Now, I am not saying that necessarily this will be forever. I hope that there will be new freedom gladiators being born today in Chile, because, of course, my creator is calling for me every day. So I will not be
Well, you're pushing him back.
But some people, if you defend your ideas in democracy, the essential point is that this can be popular. You see, I don't understand European politicians. I have met 50 of your presidents. And they all say, it's a good idea, but I will lose the next election. But why will you lose the next election? Because this will be unpopular. But how can it be unpopular to create money to people? This is the most popular thing I can think, to multiply by 4 the money of the people. Now, you have to make some adjustment on the old system, but you can explain that to a common sense mother in television if you believe in it. And you are not waiting to win a little political advantage in the next Euro election. No, if you are working for the future and you prefer to live doing what is correct rather than what is popular in the next election, this can be explained correctly, as I hope I am doing it, and you can win even elections with a little red book.
Well, thank you very much, Jose. This was the best summary ever. Jose, thank you very much for giving us this small, the shortest summary actually that I've ever heard by you on how your success was started, the outcome that we have seen, and the many opportunities there are still around. And I mean, looking at Austria, just for you, the number, the most recent number when it comes to the contributions by the government, or actually by the Austrian taxpayer to the system. Last year it was 10 billion. 2023, 2024, it will be 14.1 billion, just in addition, without the bureaucrats' pension system. So it's just the average SASVG system, just for you to know. And so we will work on this issue with the Red Bible, which is totally unusual for us, but I will announce another. I will just take your attention to look at the other Bible. Again, Hayek's Road to Serfdom, which this issue is just only with the cartoons. Please feel free to take them home, distribute them, and everybody who is interested in the longer version, write a note, send us a text, whatever, and you can pick them up at the Austrian Economic Center and at the Hayek Institute.
Use this experience to fuel your aspirations. Be part of the change. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Secure your spot now.